Look what I found on the floor here. Talk about anniversaries and things like that. The 200th edition of Starlog. In it, they named 200 of sci-fi and fantasy's 200 most important people. One of the names is naturally our sci-fi buzz commentator, author Harlan Ellison. Another that you might not be so familiar with is Julius Schwartz. Now, when I met Julius Schwartz, he gave me one of these. Isn't it neat? It is a comic book trading card put out for famous creators of comic books. Well, we asked our very own Harlan Ellison to introduce us to Julius Schwartz.
For the last, I don't know, 35, 40 years, I have been friends with a man named Julius Schwartz. He hates being called Julius. Julie Schwartz. Fabled living legend, the DC editor who reinvented the Flash, Green Lantern, the Justice Society as the Justice League. Julie was a science fiction fan. Then he became a science fiction agent. And he was an agent from the years 1934 to 1944. And amazingly enough, this man, whom I am very touching now, this man was the first agent Ray Bradbury ever had. Tell us about your meeting with Ray Bradbury, Julie.
Well, there I was at the first World Science Fiction Convention in 1939. And this fellow, who I did not know, I may have heard of him, tapped me on the shoulder and said, I am going to be a writer and I want you to be my agent. But I said, my boy, I said, I only represent professionals. He said, someday I will be a professional. I'm willing to write a story a week until you sell one for me. I said, okay, go ahead and do it. Unfortunately, it took a little more than a year, but 1941, when I was about to leave for California with my friend Edmund Hamilton,
yes,
I received a check for this Ray Bradbury. And rather than mail it, I figured we would drive there before the check would get there.
Who bought the story and how much was it?
Well, let me tell a little bit more.
This is television. This is not the theater. We haven't got three acts here.
I'm coming to the dramatic part.
All right.
So Ed and I arrived in Los Angeles, got a place to live, and we decided to go out and get something to eat. We were hungry. We walked down the street, and there's a young fellow selling newspapers on the corner. Hey, get your Los Angeles Times, get your Los Angeles Herald, as the car passes. And we look, and what is now known as a double or triple take, it's Ray Bradbury. So he rushed over, and I said, Ray, I have good news for you. I have a check for the first story you sold. I've sold, it was called The Pendulum. It sold to Super Science Stories and received 1/2 penny a word. I think the whole check came for $35.
$35.
Divided, he collaborated with, so I think I made about 74 cents on that deal.
That wasn't one of your big numbers.
That was the big, but it was the start of Ray Bradbury's career, and I sold his next 69 stories.
Now, okay, now it comes 1944, and you get a call from a buddy of yours, Mort Weisinger.
No, I got a call from one of my clients named Alfred Bester.
Was it Alfie Bester who got you in at D.C.?
Oh, absolutely. Alfred Bester was writing Green Lantern at the time. And he was writing comics because there weren't enough science fiction markets to earn a living. So as a consequence, as an agent, a 10%, I wasn't either. So he suggested I go down to All American Comics, which is sort of a branch of D.C., and apply for the job. I protested. I said, I've never read a comic. I don't know what they're all about. He says, buy a few comics, read them, and go down. So I invested 30 cents.
That much?
I bought 3 comics. That's the only money I ever spent on comics in my life. 30 cents. But it paid dividends. I went down, was interviewed by Shelley Mayer, who was the editor-in-chief, and I was hired on that day, February 21st, 1944, and I've been there ever since. It's now my golden anniversary.
In the middle, was it in the middle 60s that you rebuilt the Silver Age?
1955 was the beginning of the Silver Age.
See, what had happened was there had been a lot of witch hunting and people saying comic books are bad for kids. There was a book called Seduction of the Innocent by Dr. Frederick Wortham, one of the great loonies of our time. There was the Kefauver crime hearings, and all of a sudden, the bottom fell out of comics, and there were no more superheroes, and there were no more crime comics, there were no more horror comics, and it was all very mild. A lot of companies went out of business. Many years later now, comes Julie at DC, and he says, I think I'm going to bring back these costumed heroes. He recreated the Flash.
No, first we're going to try it out.
Oh,
we had a magazine called Showcase, and if that issue sold, we know we had something. But here's the point that many of our viewers may not understand. When a magazine appears on a newsstand, we don't know how that magazine did till 4 or 5 months later. Now, if you printed the magazine on a regular monthly basis, you printed 5 magazines, and they all turned out to be a disaster. So we have a showcase. We try one issue, wait 4 months to see what happens. So showcase number 4, reintroduced the Flash. All I kept from the Flash was the title and the super speed. Everything else was different. 4 months later, 4 months later, we got the report, and so in showcase number 8, we had another flash, showcase number 12, and so on. At that point, they said, let's go ahead and put out the flash. It became a success, and they said, Julie, what would you like to try next?
You did Green
A
Lantern.
real favorite of mine was Green Lantern,
Green Lantern.
especially since Alfred Bester wrote it, who got me into it. That proved to be a success with the change. I reintroduced the Justice Society of America, but I called it Justice League. Society is a terrible name. It sounds like a social club. A league, it's a baseball league, a football league, a basketball league. That proved to be a success, followed by the Hawkman and followed by the Atom.
All right, so now, Julie, my boy, we come through the mists of time. We come forward. This is your life. You were the Superman editor at DC for how many years?
Oh, about 16, from about 1971 to 1985, 86, I don't recall exactly.
How many times did you kill him off?
I never killed him off.
Hey, I didn't just fall off the turnip truck,
It
Schwartz.
may have seemed he was killed,
Oh,
but he had never died.
Oh, I see a cover that would say, in this issue, Superman dies, but he didn't really.
Apparently
he died.
Because I started the story on page 1 and ended on page 23 usually, and the story was over, so
Right.
Superman had an unforeseen accident.
Right.
And everyone thought he was dead. At the end, we saw
He was not dead.
he was not dead.
Unlike
Even though at the end it said the end, but that did not apply to Superman. That applied to the story.
Right. Unlike
okay.
the current situation in which he was dead, but he's not dead. What's the finest moment you ever had in the world of science fiction?
Oh, God. Oh.
You can't think on your feet?
Well,
You're
I'm
a
sitting
living
down,
legend. A
obviously.
living legend
If
should
I was
think on
standing
its
on my
feet.
feet, I've had so many great moments.
Okay.
All right, okay, here's the
Oh,
moment.
I figured we'd get it.
I was sitting in my office with Kate Swan and Murphy Anderson, who were doing my Superman. And Jeanette Kahn, who's the president of DC Comics, sent in her administrative assistant, as they call it now, and said, everyone into the conference room, this is very important, drop whatever you're doing. So I look at Murphy and I look at Kate, and we're all wondering, and I say, uh-oh, this is it.
You're all going to get canned.
Marvel has finally taken us over, or DC is going out of business. This is the worst moment of my life. And got into the room, and on a long table were 4 bottles of champagne. Boy, this is really the toasting us and sending us off in style. A few moments later, Jeanette Kahn comes in, holding a magazine clenched to her, and she announced to one and all that this is Julie's 70th birthday, and we prepared a surprise for him. And the surprise was this, and there's an issue of Superman in which I appear on the cover, and Superman is flying in with a birthday cake to wish me happy birthday. Well, I thought it was just a cover gag, but I turned the cover over, and the story is about me. So that, I guess, is certainly one of the super best moments of my life.
Tomorrow will mark another milestone for Julius Schwartz. He will celebrate 50 full years with DC Comics. Happy anniversary, Julie.